Do you have an investment property? Are you good at investing in general? We're about to meet, you and I, a fellow called James Fitzgerald. He's from Brisbane, and before he'd hit 30, he had bought, sold, or developed more than 2,000 properties. He's got a book called Bulletproof Investing, and he is basically all about it. James, good to meet you today. G'day.
Hey, Kate, and thanks for treating me to a bit of Rod Stewart on a Saturday morning.
Well, first thing I wanted to do is just check that I had the number right, because 2,000, I just don't understand even how you had time to do the paperwork for 2,000 properties by the time you were 30, because it's like an involved process, right?
Oh, I learnt off someone who was very, very knowledgeable and helped me out along the way. Yeah, bit of mentorship helped.
And it wasn't from your family. Where did you find the skills to help you along your investing career?
Well, it wasn't from my direct family. Mum and Dad, they sort of worked hard and whatnot, did all the good things that the parents should do, but never really had control over their money. So, however, my uncle, Dad's brother, on the other hand, he's a well-known property or author in his own right, self-made millionaire, all that sort of thing. He took me under his wing about 10 years ago when I was 20 years old, and just taught me the difference between working smarter and harder, which is an important little difference.
Yes, when so many people feel that the dream of owning a piece of property is beyond their grasp, the notion that one person could have bought and sold 2,000 pieces of property is sort of hard to digest, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, the reality is that it compounds over time. So it doesn't start that way. You know, in fact, 10 years ago when I started, I had a student debt of $100,000 to the government, $40,000 to a bank, personal debt, accruing 11% per annum. So I guess if I can do it, anyone can, because no one starts with properties. You've all got to start at the same place, which is zero.
So how important is the notion of financial literacy to you?
Oh, extremely important. I mean, you know, I was blessed. I went to a great school, got a university education in law and accounting, but I had no idea about personal finances. That was something that sort of slipped between the cracks. And look, I think personally, I do think it should be taught in school, financial literacy. And that's why I did write that book, Bulletproof Investing, and half of the proceeds going to one charity, but half going to another called the Financial Basics Foundation, which are doing exactly that. They're trying to get financial literacy into the official curriculum within our schools.
So there is teaching of financial literacy already, isn't there? Are you just not comfortable with the degree of education on that, or are you saying it doesn't exist in the official curriculum?
Oh, I think they try as hard as they can, but unfortunately schools, like a lot of organisations, they don't want to be seen to be giving financial advice, which I get. However, in doing that, you can sometimes miss some of the practical applications of important things like, spending less than you earn, which gets taught in the context of companies and that sort of thing, but not in terms of an individual who's trying to go through young adulthood and try and just get ahead. So I think they do a good job. I just think it needs to be that little bit more practical and hands-on for people. And I'm not necessarily the one pushing that. That's the Financial Basics Foundation. They do a great job. I'm just trying to do my little part to support them.
What was your biggest aha moment at about 20?
Oh, biggest aha moment. My uncle, John Fitzgerald, he sat me down when I was 20 years old and he said, "What do you want?" And he meant that in the context of what's sort of a goal or something that you want to work towards. And he said to me, "You should set one, because he or she who doesn't have a goal doesn't have a purpose." And I found that a really hard question to answer. I still find it a very hard question to answer some 10 years down the track. But it is important to figure out, why are you doing it? If you're going to invest, if you're going to, whether it's buying property or anything, why are you doing it? Because it's fairly simple. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it's not easy. Most people don't do that well with it. So it is important to really define that up front, and that can be hard to do.
As in, how badly do you want to grow your wealth and what are you prepared to sacrifice for it? Or like, what do you mean? Like, why is it important to have that specific a goal?
Oh, Kate, I just think it's more why you're doing it, not necessarily where are you trying to get to, but why are you wanting to build a bit of wealth? Is it motivated by leaving a legacy for your next generation? Is it that you want bigger and better things? Is it that you don't want to have to worry about money? I think that's a pretty common one. Why are you doing it? Because you have little challenges along the way, little moments where you might want to sit back and stop going forward. And it's really important to draw on that reason why you're doing it to keep going. Because it is a little bit challenging. We all get challenged. And it's so important to fall back on the reason you're doing it, just to give you that little bit of motivation to keep on going.
What do you, by the way, I'm speaking with James Fitzgerald, who's the author of a book called Bulletproof Investing, and he's invested a lot in property over the last decade or so. What do you think, James, at this time of year when it comes to, tax time and property, what are the kind of alarm bells going off in your head about things that need to happen?
Yeah, it's end of financial year, so it's tax time for most Aussies, and I'm always shocked at how much money Aussies leave on the table, so to speak, by not claiming all of the deductions that they're entitled to. I see that particularly with property investments. I see that there's the government give back about $30 billion worth of tax deductions each year, and I reckon it should be a lot more. I'm always blown away by how much we don't claim, and to the point where we did a little exercise 3 years ago. We gave all of our clients tax information to a accountant, a very good accountant who had property himself, and he said, I won't charge your clients if I can't get them a better tax refund. And he ended up charging all of them because he saved them thousands along the way, even tens of thousands for some.
Well, what do we tend to forget about?
Well, I think we forget about the biggest one is depreciation. The biggest one is depreciation because it's not something that we spend money on. Depreciation, you can depreciate any home that was built after 1987 or any home renovated after 1987. But you've got to get a quantity surveyor's opinion on what you can and can't claim with that. And then I just, to be honest with you, the good accountants just know a few little ways to get that little bit more. So often the $300 or $400 that you spend on a good accountant can sometimes pay you back 2, 3, 4-fold in terms of the extra deductions that you'll get back along the way.
So the key is to make sure you're alerting your accountant to your investment situation and making sure that you're focusing on that to make sure your individual circumstances are being addressed adequately.
Yeah, I think even more than that, just make sure that you sit down with a good expert in that field. It's a little bit of a false economy, I think, that most people want to save a bit of money by not going to a good accountant who is an expert and has investments themselves. I think it's always just worth paying that little bit of extra money for good advice from an expert.
James, having dealt with so much property over the last decade or so, what do you make of the market now in Brisbane?
Well, I think the fundamentals are there. It's all being driven by owner-occupiers and affordable rates, record migration, highest since 2004. So look, I think it's a good time. I think it'll last a little bit longer. But at the same time, the capital growth is fantastic. However, I would say for anyone who is listening, don't forget those little expenses that can be claimed along the way, because they can make a bit of a difference as well when it comes to improving your cash flow, which is very important as an investor.
Do you feel like the market's overheated at the moment in Brisbane?
No, I don't think it is, Kate. I think it's sort of the market cycle. Brisbane typically follows Sydney and Melbourne, and I think it was on that trajectory prior to COVID-19. The important part is it's being driven by owner-occupiers, which is a good fundamental to have in the market. And I think from a household expenditure point of view, we're still paying much less than 30% of our median wage towards the house repayments on a mortgage. So I think there's still a little bit to go. wouldn't say it's overheated, but things can change.
James, thank you so much for speaking to us today.
You're welcome, Kate. Have a good one.